Today is September 15, 2023. The time is 10:49 in the morning. Welcome to our scheduled Guam Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission meeting. Chief Steve Ignacio, who was voted as the temporary interim executive director, sends his apologies. He's unable to be with us today. I have my co-chair, Ray Antononia, and myself, Vincent Perez, will be going through the agenda, and hopefully we can get you guys out as soon as possible. So I'm going to start by calling roll. And answer if you're here. Guam Police Department. Guam Airport Police.
Present.
Guam Port Police. Guam Attorney General.
Present.
Customs and Parking here. Guam Department of Corrections.
Present.
Division of Aquatic and Wildlife Resources. Guam Department of Agriculture.
Here.
University of Guam. Guam Community College. Unified Courts of Guam Marshal Judiciary.
Present.
Guam Fire Department.
2 present.
Unified Courts of Guam Probation. Here. Guam Department of Administration, Personnel Services.
Here.
Department of Youth Affairs.
Here.
And Art.
Present.
And Parks and Rec.
Present.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. We don't have the minutes as of yet, so we will return to that as soon as we're able to get it. I'll keep my remarks short, and then I'll pass it over to Ray Antononia. We're going to be discussing some of the updates as it relates to the executive director and a few other things that are listed on the agenda. A lot of things are fluid, so I just ask that you have some patience, because a lot of things that we try to put in the queue and formalize, they really sometimes they take quite a bit of time. Somebody just asked me this morning, I said, man, we'll get there, so just bear with me. My remarks, I'm going to keep it really short because a lot of it will be on the discussion on where we're at with certain things. So, welcome again. I hope everybody is okay, everybody's safe, and we'll continue to press forward. So, Ray?
Thank you. Welcome again. I know it was a long delay because of the storm. Recovery efforts from each department. Though we're back in session, and I hope we can run through this agenda as smoothly as we can. Though I do ask if we can put the phones aside. And I'll keep it short. I hope we can come to an understanding to try and move forward with what's in still for our agenda.
Okay. We'll move on to section 4. We would like to have a moment of silence just to share our thoughts, our prayers for the late Robert Marshall. So, if you please. Now move into some old business, starting with number 1, the General Force Leadership Structure Tier update. So it's been quite a few months since we voted on the General Force Leadership Structure Tier, and so what we've been doing is that we've been working with the Lieutenant Governor's Office to try and help us in moving the General Force Leadership Structure Tier forward. And hopefully, once we adopt, I mean, it's been adopted and it's been incorporated into all of our position descriptions, and it would give some kind of incentive for the law enforcement officers to be able to receive some kind of compensation, starting at the very entry level, going into your apprenticeship program, from apprentice to journey to craft to master craftsman. And so each of those levels will entail receiving some kind of compensation increase based on your ability to complete your core courses and apprentice program time requirements. And hopefully that creates an environment where there's an incentive for people to stay rather than trying to find an opportunity to leave. And so what happens is that if we're able to do that, I know it's not something that will be materializing anytime soon, but I imagine there will come a time when everybody who comes in, who are the younger guys, it's almost like going into the military and you decide to change your branch, like within the Guard and Reserve. You don't lose your enlisted rank status if you're an E4. You don't go down to E1. You go from E4 across to E4, and all you're required to do is to take the core competency training and your specialized training if necessary. And so hopefully we're able to get there from here. We have a strong foundation as far as the force leadership structure tier is concerned. And as I mentioned, I've been working closely with the Lieutenant Governor's office, and the Lieutenant Governor is very keen on trying to incorporate this. And we do realize that there are some stumbling blocks along the way, but if we're able to do this as a unified effort, it won't be hard to incorporate. Keep in mind that each entity will probably have to make sure that they have their SMEs on the ground to ensure that at each level of the force structure that you identify the core competencies and specialized training and the education and credits that may be necessary or certifications that are necessary in order to be proficient at that level. Anybody want to discuss anything on item number 1?
I just have a comment. So would that SME, with reference to the general force leadership structure, be the training officer, or is that up to agency head?
It could be either or. I mean, the way I see it, right, is like we're not rigid as far as who's going to be identifying the requirements, but I would think that maybe not even the training officer. What if you have somebody who's like got years of experience and they say, I think this is something that would encapsulate your apprentice, your journeyman, your craftsman, and then, of course, the appointing authority would be the one signing off on it, but in collaboration with not just HR, but the appointing authorities, processing HR director, like in our case, is like Mr. Byrne, right?
Yeah, so those agencies that don't have their own HR people or personnel specialists really would have to work in tandem with TOA.
Yes, and that's some of the stumbling blocks that we're seeing, is that we need to make sure that we're able to at least develop core competencies along the different law enforcement entities. And I don't think it's too difficult, because if you have people doing a job already, you can say, I think that this job entails, like at this level, we'll consider this their apprentice. We'll consider this their journeyman, their craftsman, their master craftsman. So the HR experts are the guys, like at DOA, for example, they can help us in creating the skeleton. And a lot of things are done, like when you get issued the position description questionnaire, your folks are the ones that are filling it out. And then somewhere along the way, you can say, there's room for one more position in here. right? But I'm talking about something that's kind of intangible at the moment because I know what I see in my agency. I don't know what's going on in the other entities. I just know that this is a very good opportunity for us to develop additional levels for promotion. In some entities, there's only like 1 or 2 levels, and then you have a supervisor, and that's it. There's nobody overseeing the section aside from like a sergeant or a lieutenant. We might actually need somebody at the higher tier. So these are the things that gives us the opportunity to create the opportunities for our guys to want to stay, and also help them by giving them the opportunity to get promotions, non-competitive promotions at that, when you're in the apprenticeship program. Any other questions? Okay, item number 2, our endeavor with Police One, implementation update. We've been working with Lieutenant Regis from the Airport Authority to help us in facilitating this, and his group has been very kind in trying to help us by hook or by crook and pulling us kicking and screaming towards that goal. So maybe what I can do is, Ray, if I can ask you for an update on where we're at as far as the implementation, and then I'll throw in some of my thoughts also.
Roger that, Chief.
Yeah.
Just for the record, I'm not getting any commission from policeone.com. I'm advocating for it. It's everyone's so serious.
Yeah.
So just so I don't put the cart before the horse, can I just go back to the show? So earlier this year, I was trying to assist all our law enforcement family to implement this online policeone.com training program. And so after the preliminary meeting, which some of you guys were there, we identified how to manipulate and how to maneuver through this online training program. We had a Zoom meeting with Mr. Blaine Smith, who's actually our Guam liaison for Lexipol. So he's very good. He understands that what we're doing, and he understands that some people may need help to register for this program. So I believe some of you guys may have received some emails from Mr. Smith asking to log in. So as soon as you log in, he's going to ask for an administrator. An administrator is your agency's training personnel or administrator to identify training programs into Police One. So whatever is advantageous for your respective agency, that administrator will identify that training program and give it to the users. So Mr. Blaine Smith, very good guy. He's willing to work with our hours and his hours to help us log in. So all we need to do is start logging in to this policeone.com training program. It's paid for, Chief. Everything, we're ready to go. So if you guys need help registering, just let me know. But Mr. Blaine Smith has already been sending out emails to the people that we gave the email address to. So early on this year, I gave Mr. Blaine Smith all the email addresses for each respective agency. So he's probably sending out those. Those administrators will add and or delete. So that administrator will manage your agency's training program under the policeone.com. But we're ready to go, it's paid for. So Mr. Blaine Smith is just asking if people can start registering so we can get the respective numbers to identify whether or not what we paid for is good enough or less. So you can identify whether or not we can add on more for outer agencies or inner agencies, as opposed to what I gave them already.
Okay, so one of the things that happened was I was approached by one of the officers in our agency, and they said, "Hey, is this spam mail?" And I said, "What are you talking about? We're getting something to sign up for a program under Police One." But I recall that I had received. So it would be safe to say that if you see an email from Police One and the guy's name is Blaine Smith, chances are it's not spam. So maybe what we can do is, like, if collectively we can just send out emails once we know that we're on the bubble, to let our employees know that when you see this email, start completing your login. Because even me, when I looked at it, I wasn't too sure, but I said, let me just double click, and then I found out that I went to the right website, and then I got out of it, went to the site itself. It was the same thing, so.
Yes, sir. And with the administrators, I know it may seem scary, but he has a tutorial. So if you're identified as an administrator, just go to that tutorial, because I gave Mr. Bladesmith the email address for those who were given to me to identify your administrators. So I confirmed it with Mr. Bladesmith that these are your administrators for these agencies. So if you're having trouble with the tutorial, which it's very easy to maneuver around policeone.com, just let me know and I can sit down and help you guys out.
Okay, so just a caveat off of that. So as a Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission, we're trying to standardize a lot of the different types of trainings, which would include CBTs, and right now we're kind of developing the foundation to get there from here. As I mentioned before in previous meetings, it's kind of difficult when you don't have a person 100% of the time dedicated. We're almost like drill status guards, been coming to drill, and then when you leave, you have your regular life to do. In this case, we all have our regular jobs to do. And we're going to address that through the hiring of the executive director. But this thing with the Police One, once we have that, it can help us in developing our own training requirements and our own annual computer-based trainings, so that we can ensure that, in line with the effort to go towards a force structure type environment, these things will help us, because it keeps track of everybody's training and certification as we move forward. So, how do you eat the elephant? That's pretty much how we're going to do it, just a little bit at a time. And I know that it'll take some time, but if we're all proactive enough to make sure that our guys are getting on and doing it, and I know that we're going to have some challenges along the way, but I know that, we're able to do it. I mean, we've come a long way from, I think, 15 years ago, as far as like our post commission, but we still have a lot of growing to do in capacity building. So I'm harping on this because this is the way forward. I believe if our budget got approved, that we've got money also for the next upcoming year. And I don't want to see the agencies pick up the cost, but if we don't get funding, we may have to rely on having each respective entity start looking at it as part of their budget. So, but if you don't use it, then it becomes useless.
So, sorry, I don't normally talk this much. I want to thank Ray for putting DYA online. We came online later, but the whole idea behind the learning management system, right, is so that POST has an accurate accounting of all the courses that are required and that are suggested, right? A suggested curriculum from each different law enforcement agency.
You could do that, yes.
So, are you the overall administrator for it?
Yes, so.
He was volunteered by
So I'm the unofficial executive director of
because
the policeone.com initiative.
there were already old hats of doing this. So if you gave it to Vince Perez, and I don't know anything about it, I'm gonna be scratching my head every meeting, not knowing, because they've got the expertise, and he came highly recommended from law.
So would he then be in charge, like, you can develop the curriculum, and you can also, it's such a great site. I've registered, I took the corrections pieces, the juvenile corrections pieces, and it's ideal for us because we do shift work, but I could set the curriculum, and then you as the overall administrator could tell me, right? Or could I look at it myself for my agency to see who has complied with all the post and, the corrections, the juvenile corrections courses?
So each agency has the autonomy to identify what training is advantageous for their respective personnel. So I'm just pretty much the liaison for the post commission to brief on the progress of each agency, not to dictate policy, not to dictate training, but more or less just be the liaison for Guam to Lexipo. So if Lexipo needs any questions, they get with me and I can be like the middleman, just a reporting entity or liaison for the post commission.
So I just think to make it easier on all of us, though, is post requires that we're all certified, correct? And so all of us that are certified have the certification that Robert Camacho signed off on. Somebody needs to enter that in the Police One curriculum, in the learning management system, so that you can see, in addition to post, we also have these trainings under our belt, which again, are great, excellent trainings. So, I mean, again, it just professionalizes us even more. And it does address the certification, of, like who's all post. It's found in one learning management system. So again, thanks again for being voluntold to do this, and for really giving us access to a great program, especially for our shift workers.
Thank you. And our challenges, right, for our ship personnel, especially with ship, from what I see, is pushing them to do this training. And you know, we're all managers here. We all want to encourage professional growth. And you're right. This online training program, the training is pervasive, and there's a lot of different angles we can look at it. But it's advantageous for everyone, especially our law enforcement family. And again, I'll be here to help anybody out.
Chief, question for continuity. When is the shift for paying for this learning management system going to be shifted to each individual agency?
That remains to be seen. We got the approval to make sure that we got it in this year's budget. So hopefully it's in there. I haven't seen it. I was just asking Chief Cordalia whether or not he saw the budget, because I wanted to look at it to see, so I can give you more updates. But hopefully it's in there. If not, then we may have to start moving towards incorporating that.
Do you have an estimate of how much it will cost? Like currently, how much does it cost to maintain the system?
How much was it?
So we're spending
for
the airport, it's variable, right? It's like,
it's not a big cost if you break it down, but it's.
But don't break it down, just how much would it cost? Because if we break it down, I mean, in the fire department, if we had a choice between getting advantages and then
$70,000 Guam wide. 70 grand to cover all the law enforcement, if I'm not mistaken.
But what is the plan to break that down to each agency?
It's probably going to, that remains to be seen. Like I said, we're hoping it's in this year's budget. And I think there was some discussion at the front office that we want to keep it with the post, which means that it will force us to start developing our fee table, our fee structure. But even before we do that, we need somebody in the seat. So,
because if we make it optional for each individual agency, I can tell you it's not going to be funded.
yeah.
And I have like a crystal ball that can predict that. We need to make it where it's going to be paid if we want to keep it. You know, and I think it's a good system. It's a good any learning management system like this, and it's affiliated with all the different types of agencies, public safety agencies.
Yes.
But it should be under one fund, not optional amongst the agencies. We know our government, and we know that ain't gonna work.
Thank you, Joey.
Thanks, Chief.
You're welcome, Vince.
Anyway, when they started the program, they came up with a number, and that was Lexipol, that came up with the 70 grand as a uniform for the entire government. Well, as far as the numbers concerned, that's not discussed. But as a whole, in the government, Lexipol actually looked at it and says, oh, this is what's gonna cost the government. So, we don't know the breakdown as far as, you know, if you have 250 employees, we don't know how much are assumed to be drafted off from the department. So we'll get to that. But as what Chief was explaining, we were actually, the information was, we have it for this year's budget to support the system so that we can kick it down, you know, take it forward and move forward.
Why would you want to kick it down though?
No, I take it back. To actually move forward with the system. But the starting is Lieutenant Ranges has a very good idea with Mr. Lane Smith. And that's to appoint, you know, just a point of contact, one person, and that's the administrator for the department. And so the learning process of what the department needs on training residents, that is the administrator directed by the director of the department. What training regimens to qualify this individual, even for promotional basis. So it's actually in the department's head where they create and add additional trainings for whatever the employee or the police officer is required. Then let's say go to the next rank, he needs to obtain these trainings and so on. That the administrator of the department will actually get that from the directors of the department. Like us at our, I'll give you a prime example. This thing gave me a leverage now to create a firefighter 3 for the officer position. And that's very, it's very good. And so that already has shared with management that I'm actually looking at that in-house. And so to make it official, then we gotta go out now and take it down to the legislation and say, we're gonna identify this police, our personnel as a firefighter police position to create. And so that's why the structure, tier structure is there to help us, just to generate the level of responsibilities. Because we're having a lot of problems, with a lot of complaints, and let's be honest, we're putting people out there that don't even qualify to take the job on. It's because of lack of personnel. And we're giving them double work, and the position actually that they are in, it doesn't identify that responsibility. So this tier structure, I really agree with this. It helps keep us in line and keep us focused.
Well, just to move forward, right, where we got it, and let's try to use it, and if it gets to the point where we have to start to discuss putting it in the budgets, like I said earlier, that remains to be seen. When the executive director comes on board, that person will be the one that will be going through and doing all the things that we really need to do to develop the entity. Because, like I said, going to this, showing up every quarter for post meetings and having to try and do a lot of lunch time, there's not enough energy to move things forward. So we'll get there when we get there. Park Patrol training program, I know years, it was a year ago, we were approached regarding the Park Patrol training program, and I don't know if we have any updates. So one of the things that we'd like to see is to start standardizing your training requirements for the entry levels. So, yes, Greg, are you representing the Park Patrol
Yes, but as far as the updates, Colonel Turley hasn't given me anything to present.
Perhaps you could take this back and just say that we had a submission that was really not a submission on the training program for the recruits. And if you take a look at like the police department and their training requirements and their syllabus for training and stuff like that, and you compared it with what you guys had submitted initially, it was very sparse, right? So I'm just thinking you develop a day-by-day syllabus, for example, identify who the key stakeholders are, what type of education training requirements are needed, firearms training, hand-to-hand combatives, anything that you need in order to certify as a peace officer or an officer to be able to do whatever it is that you need to do.
Yes.
So if you need any help, you can just reach out. I can ask some of my guys to come help you in developing it. But who was the person that was approached before? There was somebody who.
It was Joaquin Mesa.
And we offered that same thing. We offered that same assistance. So I know it's not easy to develop, but once you start to develop it, you can see that everything starts to fall in line.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
If I can chime in that.
Sure.
You know, on April of 2015, when I was chief of police, and it was at a post-commission meeting, by vote, I submitted an advanced police officer training program for the Guam Police Department. And there was an asterisk that those who completed that, if they had completed the Police Reserve Academy, that Guam Police was holding, that would be reciprocity for the post-commission. And it was a unanimous vote at that time. So I'm sure the Police Officer Standards and Training Commission have their files on that it could be a model that you could look at on what the hours of the training that the park rangers are going to go to. Both your full-time, and then I think park rangers are authorized to have park patrol reserve officers too. That was authorized by law. So we probably could follow that same maybe request from the executive director. And I believe one of the fire was voting on that unanimous vote. And I think a number of the AGs was here too, that had witnessed that, which went very good. I just wanted to say that because we're on the record anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so we got
Yes, sir.
people who are very capable. All right, going on to number 4, the Guam Post Commission regulations and Guam Peace Officer certification of departments, operational requirements, which are pending. And I know that Chief Rodaya had mentioned that we may have it in our file somewhere, right? So one of the things that we're running into is that whenever we have these meetings and you have to go to the administrative rules and update them, you need somebody to actually physically go down and submit something to, as far as updates. So we haven't really been addressing that. Some things do get through, some things don't. And so one of the things that the executive director, and hopefully he gets a full-time staff assigned to that person, will start going back through all the old files and putting them and addressing it through the updates and putting it in the administrative rules. Because that's part of the function, is that when you have something that comes out through the commission and it's going to be applied across the board, you need to update the rule. So that's why we're saying it's pending. This discussion is not going to end. I was wondering, I'm just going to open it up to the floor to see if there's any possible way, maybe we don't have maybe we have another way of looking at it. I just feel like we need somebody physically going in and actually taking everything and identifying it one by one, and then going down and having a submission, a mass submission of what our rules are. So, any discussion on this?
I'd like to chime in. Right now, we're involved in the criminal justice review of the criminal code in there. This is headed by Magistrate Judge Jonathan Kwan. And that just reveals all the criminal code, Title IX, even Chapter 2, right? But I would think that a member of representative of the Attorney General's is here, but from the AG's investigator, right?
Sure.
But we don't have a member of the Attorney General, an attorney that's down here. And last time I remember we would have those real good insight from their attorney, from the officer's attorney, of an attorney's here, because they could be able to review the post law and our regulations that we're considering to keep current or maybe change or modify, because things have changed since I was back here. So I would just say that since there's a member of the Attorney General's office, but age investigator, if she could bring that back to General Moyne and say if there could be an attorney down here from the AG's office, that would make the process smoother, especially when we're getting into post-commission rules and regulations.
Sure.
Any further? Okay, we'll go into some new business, which was actually old business a little bit. Number 1, Guam Post Executive Director update and a recommendation for interim post chair. So the last time we met, we actually voted for an interim post chair after the passing of Robert Camacho, and that was, we elected Chief Steve Ignacio to act in the interim. However, we've been working with the front office and the Department of Administration on the hiring of Mr. John Zama. We voted on his nomination, I think it was in March of this year. And I'm happy to announce that he has already passed the first stage, which is the urinalysis. And now we're just waiting on, I guess, the date when he's available. And once he's available, Ray and myself and probably Miss Bertha will also sit down with him and start to identify some of the things and moving forward, and hopefully fix some of the issues that we've been having as far as like lack of momentum in certain areas.
Chief, that's gonna be a full-time Monday through Friday type of job?
Yes, it is. It always has been. It's just, we haven't filled, if you recall, Dennis Tomas, I think, was the last person, I think, to fill it. And when Dennis was here, he was able to start moving bits and pieces around. But the commission, if you look at the law, it's only that one position. Everybody else is either appointed through or the leadership. And so what we're trying to accomplish right now is to have the commission with a little bit more bodies and a little bit more teeth. So the organization should grow from an organization of one person to maybe, I'm thinking 3 or 4. Because you're gonna need somebody to take a look at certifications, and you need like administrative support staff.
IT record.
So all of that stuff, thank you to Ms. Bertha, but she is not, she doesn't belong to the post commission. She is assigned to the president's office to do their role. So we've been relying heavily on the support from GCC. So whenever we can, we try to pick up the slack, but we really need more than just one body.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think based on the enabling legislation for the post, GCC has designated the state agency for the
Yes.
post.
Yes.
They're supposed to provide the administrative and professional services to us.
Yes.
I think if we're going to consider, like you said, maybe getting more permanent staff, like 2 or 3, I don't know, we may want to consider amending the legislation to give us the authority to hire.
Yes.
Because right now it only says we shall appoint a chair, executive director.
Yes.
So that's something.
Yeah, we're
we want to-
working with the front office on that, and they're aware that we need to move outside of our reliance on GCC. And there was some in-depth discussion on making amendments to the law so that we can be a truly outside of everything, not just being attached to something, because it almost gives the impression that, you know, we have to take into consideration certain things because of where we're housed. So you're not truly independent.
Would we be entertaining that as well, separating, having our own office somewhere?
Yes, all of that has been discussed at length. So there might be something coming up within the year or maybe early next year. But, you know, I can't really talk about it. We're not really, I mean, it's all just talk. Yes. Anyone else?
I just wanted to say that I heard, and this was just over the media, that Senator Chris Barnett was planning to do some roundtable with the Police Officer Standards and Training Commission. I don't know how far he's getting on that, what he's reviewing. You know, he's planning on a roundtable. I know we've been talking to the front office, but especially because one portion of his bill, I think he's taking it off the table, but one was to appoint the Director of Parks and Recreation as a member of POST. But I think from what I heard his conversation yesterday when I saw him at the recovery celebration, it's recovery celebration, over at the Lighthouse, is that he's pulling that off the table, but I remember that we now have a superintendent of Parks and Region, so that might be the member of the host.
Yeah.
But I think that might be coming down, you never know from the legislature, or should they may hold around the table, and it will just be focused on where the post commission is at right now, and the GCC's relationship to the Guam, to the post commission.
It's actually good news. All right, go to number 2, discussion on how to incentivize the physical fitness test. We've brought this up in previous meetings, and I know that when you look on the face of the annual law enforcement officers' physical fitness testing, we run into issues such as waivers or long-term excuses for one to not participate. But one of the things that kind of hit it home was when Bob Macho passed away because of what he was trying to accomplish for the physical fitness test. And maybe instead of looking at it as a punitive thing, there could be an incentive, a change of paradigm, so to speak. We're all law enforcement officers, and really it's up to us. But we also have to recognize that in some cases, there are some long-term illnesses that need to be considered. And I know that Chief Ray Mantelonia had brought this up before regarding an external body being able to do a medical review, so that if somebody were to try and go through the process, there would be an unbiased group, so to speak, to help us in making a decision as far as where this person stands with their physical fitness and their endeavor. So, I don't know, I mean, what do you guys think about what kind of ideas do we kind of look at? I did hear, or I did read in some counties in the States, they actually look at like a financial incentive. Like if you're able to maintain your physical fitness, it could be something like you get a stipend for something, right? Here, it seems like we're experiencing the same issues time and time again, and then after the physical fitness testing is completed, you have your officers who did participate, who did pass, and then you have your small group that don't pass. But what I'm hearing is that for the sake of the officers who have passed, they're asking, why am I not exempted when we're exempting all these other people? And, it's like human nature. Everybody's different, but they do bring up a point. I mean, maybe some of the things we can do is like put in qualifications for promotion or qualifications for certain things, that if you don't qualify at least minimally for your physical fitness, you cannot compete for promotion. And this is just something I'm just saying out loud. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the situation would come to if we did it that way. But we need to start looking at the physical fitness program and what we can do to either enhance it or to make some changes so that we can continue on. Because I know, based on my experience with my agency, there is a select few who year after year are saying that they can't do it. And to me, I think that if we're able to maybe even modify a program or just say, let's see how you're doing, and at least if you're showing you're trying, we should take that into consideration. Any thoughts?
I think that all of the agencies here experience the same issues.
Yeah.
And it's a very sensitive issue. And so I like the idea of incentivizing, maybe like the way we do merit bonuses. If you pass it, you get, a certain percent. I'm agreeable to that, but I also like the idea about if the post commission is going to be on its own, if we're going to remove ourselves from GCC, then maybe we ought to consider hiring, our own healthcare providers to do those medical certifications, because I have used DOA. I think we all have gone through that process of using DOA, but pretty much it comes back as whatever the employee says, like I can do it, I can still be a youth correctional officer, but
Yeah.
I have these limitations, and we just have to accept it. We can't argue that. We haven't argued that. So if we have our own that is tasked with looking at our specific, like you said, what are the core competencies, and look at what our rules say, because our rules are very clear. You're not supposed to. And also look at, for example, we have the correctional institutional pay. That's 25%. And right now, it's a free-for-all, just so long as you come to work. And so if we look at our existing policies and we make amendments based on what it says, we align ourselves. But again, like you said, it's hard to do when we're not all here all the time. So we say we have these great ideas, but I'm sure once we have the executive director on board, he can push forward with these things. And I think it is, like you said, one person alone can't do it. So he's gonna have to build his staff.
Well, like, we put this out here so that, hopefully by the time we meet, next month, I should have already fully briefed, hopefully the executive director is fully on board, can start discussing, and then perhaps even coming out with a committee to help address it. Some of the other things that come to mind is like, if you're unable to meet the physical fitness, or you're on a long-term profile and you can't move, we take certain, in some entities, right, you have your hazardous duty pay, like, that they pay out, right? Maybe you remove that, you say, well, for the sake of this, because you're not, we will put you on desk duty, we're gonna remove you, and you will no longer be available, you will no longer have the availability of having the hazardous duty pay, because we're removing you from the threat area and putting you behind a desk somewhere away from where potential traffic comes in. These are just some of the things that we're looking at, but it's frustrating because when we say, you really need to meet the requirements of your physical fitness, the person at the other end of that is going to say, you have no consideration for my illness. But the thing is, if we're able to proactively address, like, hey, we'll take you out baby steps, and at least show me that you're willing, instead of flatly refusing to do anything. Because, and if you look at some of the physical fitness trainings for the end of the year, they're like circuit trainings, right? So it's not too difficult, but it's also taxing. I don't know. I just feel that we need to do something to be able to bridge that gap, to ensure that the guys who actually do take it every year feel like they're important. At the same time, the guys who don't feel that, we understand where they're coming from, but we also have a responsibility to ensure that we have a fit group of people working. So we can probably we will discuss this with the executive director once that Mr. Lozano gets on board.
Mr. Chair, we're both, I'm retired Air Force, you're still in the Air Force?
Yeah.
When it comes to like physical fitness instruments, one of the considerations that you can take amongst agencies, we just don't do it, is alternative means of testing. And when I say alternative,
Yeah.
something that's acceptable, let's say somebody has bad knees, But when we develop alternative means of testing, it allows us for more greater success outcomes.
Yes.
Okay, so just because somebody cannot perform a certain physical fitness test, that does not mean you can use that to predict that they cannot be successful in whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them, what is the intent of the instrument? The intent is to predict success. Now, I can tell you one thing right now, with the fire department and our FPATs, our firefighter fitness agility test, it is a good predictor of success based on the job that we do, but there's other jobs where, you know, we're giving these testing requirements, but are they really gonna use that level of fitness for what they're doing? It's something to think about. What was the original intent of having a physical agility test? It's used as a predictor of success. So consider alternative methods, and by the way, this is not something that's unique to any area. It's actually federal recommendations to have these alternatives. Not to give anybody a shortcut or be easy on them, but when you develop these alternatives, it helps make everybody more successful, the organization. Air Force does it, by the way.
Perhaps when we come and meet, we can, hopefully after I briefed with Mr. Lizama, we can come up and form some kind of committee, and then we take all these considerations. But we're gonna need to make sure that when we attend these things, that we really peel back the onion, because, you know, you do one layer, and then somebody comes up with something, and then you're like, well, then we go down the wrong road. We gotta make sure that we keep it, focused on whatever the objective is, right? And we need to almost spell out what are we gonna do if this happens, because it almost seems like what is insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, and we're trying to do something, but we're doing the same thing. We need to maybe change our process, change how we look at it, change our paradigm or our perspective. But yes, I'll bring that up. Special note. Any other discussion? No? Medical programs / medical profiles and post decertification. This actually goes in line. Oh no, I'm sorry, I skipped one. Discussion on implementation of interim recruitment process to provide sworn LEOs much more expediently to law enforcement agencies. So I know that from our end, we have a challenge in trying to pick up recruits for training. However, I would be remiss if I don't recognize the fact, like, the Department of Administration on their end has their own challenges as far as like personnel resources. But I don't know, Francis, if you're aware of something that we may be able to do. I have a thought, which is we have eventually through our own budgets, pick up somebody who is satellited from DOA to help us in the interim. And that would help us, because right now it just seems like the Department of Administration is kind of short on personnel and resources, as so are we all, right? But it takes such a long time for us to get bodies to even become a recruit, and then even after becoming a recruit, we have to send them to the basic law enforcement academy, and then we have to go through the backgrounds and do all this other stuff, and then eventually run them through your own law enforcement entity-centric training. So by the time they're all done, it could be a year, sometimes even longer than a year. So I know that Bob was trying to come up with some kind of process, but he never really articulated, other than it would be a good idea for us to try and facilitate it. And I believe that the Guam Police Department has been doing some of the things to help expedite processes by working in collaboration with DOA. So I don't know, Francis, do you see any way of us being able to try to facilitate onboarding or picking up
right at this time, no, it's more like, as you just mentioned, Mr. Chairman, it's staffing. We are working on our staffing now. We just recently brought on board one staff this week. That's going to help us in the recruitment area, so we hope to bring on more hopefully soon. So, you know, from our perspective, that's the big issue. So, versus once we bring in more staff, they're gonna be trained a bit, and then things will start.
One of the things, in discussion with Chief Bob before he passed, there was an idea that came up to minimize the impact at DOA, and I fairly believe that will work. Maybe he didn't share that one time. But one of the ideas was to mitigate the departments, the agency on the academy coming at once to submit that, oh, we got 40 recruits at GPD, we got 30 recruits at DOC, we got 20 over at CQA, we got 30 over at 1.5. What Bob's idea was to mitigate the impact, to the departments have to come together and say, okay, I need this right away because it's an impact on my department, so forth. So who goes first to be prioritized with the situation DOA is in? So that is what Bob was trying to bring up to DOA and say, which departments actually to prioritize in as to who actually is supposed to come line first. So, might be funny, Chief, but that's one of the things that he had in mind. And I think it's a good idea, you know, because if you can corral and line up everybody, not as a whole, but in line and go in as a unit, you're gonna succeed because there's no impact. It's controlled, just like applications for promotions. You have a line of, you know, you got your first step, even if you have 300 applicants, you got them in line. You control the line, you will control your impact. Right now, there's no control on the line.
Chief, that sounds very ideal, but the reality is this, within each agency, and I'll give you an example with the fire department alone. Just from the application period to the hiring period, could take over anywhere from 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
If we're gonna take up the entire year, same thing goes with GPD. Same thing goes with every other agency. So that's a very good idea to lessen the impact. But Francis brought it up. Their real issue is staffing.
Yeah.
They're like too deep, sometimes maybe one at any given time. Even if you get in line, they're still gonna be impacted either way. The root problem is they need staffing. So we all need staffing, and if you're gonna talk about priority, I mean, everybody's gonna look at themselves and say, we should be first.
Okay.
Or they're gonna pull from a hat. I mean, we're over 100 firefighters short. GPD, DOC, we can all say, probably give numbers like that. So,
Like I mentioned, Chief, it was an idea that he brought up.
it is a good idea.
And I see what
In an ideal environment, but we're not here looking at ideal
to show
situations.
staffing, to control the flow of applicants just coming right in for recruitments. And so, that's one of the key Bob actually was sharing,
Yes.
to share that with you guys.
Perhaps there's something that could be delegated from DOA to the law enforcement entity. Some of the things that could be delegated to the administrative support staff or the training staff that maybe we can do, like some of the things is like the physical fitness run, the quarter-mile run. I mean, we could do stuff like that, right? The proctoring of the test. I mean, just maybe delegate some of that stuff. I'm sure that we have something to gain out of it, so we would make sure that we'd be able to facilitate it. I don't know, I mean, that's just some of the things that we could.
Darren Guy from Conservation. You know, what Chief here was saying, It's true, because I'm going through it right now. Okay? It was in my public hearing, okay, with the apprenticeship program. And it is that DOA is short. And I understand what you guys are trying to say, prioritize. Well, I've been prioritized down at the bottom level for a long time. And I'm very, very, very short officers. And it's nothing to do against DOA, and we're not trying to say anything about the administration or anything like that, or so on and so forth. But DOA, I can say for sure that DOA, they have done their best, right? Unfortunately, we do not have the personnel to correct. We have approached that. Hey, we can do the quarter mile. Hey, we can proctor. But again, because those are sensitive type things, right? They're not willing at this point to release that. So really, it's post, executive, and DOA that needs to come together now, right? To say, okay, I've even offered that hey, we can send some of our AOs, admin type to go help out, right? Okay, but that's way beyond. So again, everything here is true, even that. I'm not gonna sit here and say, I don't want to get into that. GPD is more important than GFD. Everybody, every law enforcement entity here is equal, okay? Because we all share the burden, right, of law enforcement, right, for the island of Guam, as peace officers of the territory of Guam, right? So the real picture is DOA, HR, and itself. They got one, but that's three to support all of us here, line agents. We're not just talking recruitment. We're talking also when they have to review the package for their promotion, get them into that eligibility. Again, as we sit here, all the little things we do takes up 8 hours of our time. Don't get 3 things happening. What? And some of us like to go out there and get tactical. Okay, so it's a bigger picture, right? And we're not trying to say, I'm not trying to say the administration is not doing anything. I'm just saying, okay, all of these ideas that you guys have I've done and experienced personally, okay, and DOA has done their best. And the bigger picture is post, executive, and DOA needs to get together and say, hey, what really can we do? We did it with GSA procurement a long time ago, where they did pull in to help out GSA in the procurement process. It's just now that the higher ups at that level need to come together and say, okay, what really needs to be done?
Good idea. Anybody else?
Can I just add in that, one post meeting and I approached DOA and asked during the Police Officer Standards and Training Commission, the agencies have to pay for the psychological examination, right? Sometimes it's about $400. I don't know what the price is, whether
I think it's like 400.
400 plus.
Per person.
For each individual. Can you imagine 32 times 400? So my proposal to the Department of Administration at the time, you probably could bring it up with the director, was that in the states, law enforcement agencies, there'll be a vendor and they'll have an entire group in a classroom and they'll do a personality assessment. Just from that one group test, examination test, they'll weed out those that have a certain personality disorder by the way they answer those questions. And it's a licensed psychologist who gives that group test to all the applicants, rather than one by one, 400. Saves the government money, and it's very expedient because you can move groups of 30 to 50, 60 applicants all through that one whole DOA classroom or wherever it will be held at.
Yeah.
And that will save the government money, and at the same time, you still accomplish the same thing too. What the purpose, why we put it, I believe in the current post law, we put that didn't have to be examined by a physician, or a psychologist. And I think we put in the language just in the psychological.
Using validated insurance, yes.
I think we made that adjustment.
Okay, that's actually hopefully it's good news, because we spend, I think, $400 to $500 per person. So you have a cycle of 20 to 40.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
It's 700 depending on what you ask for. And on the psychological, it says you have to have it, but it doesn't say what shall be in that test. So we had this issue when we were trying to get quotes from two of the doctors out there. So one doctor says, well, these are the things your officer should have, and this is what it will cost. The other doctor says, no, you don't really need this, and you don't need that, and so this is the cost for these three things. So the problem we had is, what do we ask for when we put out for a gold standard? Yeah, because of the law, it's just a psychological test, but it doesn't say what shall be in that test, what type, because they use different types of tests, right? And, we found this out the hard way because we're arguing between the two, Dr. K and Dr. L, on what exactly should we be doing. And so, I think it was $550 for one, and then the other one was $700, and then we're scratching our forehead. And then the issue of, again, is polygraph. We don't have anybody in our department that does polygraph, so we're overwhelming GPD. And then the other requirement is, the way the law was intended was all this is supposed to be done prior to them starting.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is get all this done while they're in the academy. Right? And I know Senator Parkinson was introducing a bill to make that law where we could do it, all these other psychological background polygraph while they're in the recruit or going through the academy prior to their 1 year anniversary. The problem becomes later is you do this for the 1 year, we don't get the polygraph or the psych, but not because of them, but because of us. We're not able to fully get it done, then what happens? We can't just let them go, and then once they meet their probation, their 1 year, then that becomes a civil service issue and an adverse action. So that's still some things that we need to kind of iron out, and how do we address that?
And Major, you just brought up another point on how long it extends just to get that person into the academy.
Yeah.
And when we talk about prioritizing, I mean, that's just gonna add to the time frame right there.
Yeah.
So you just brought up another very good
So
point.
there's just a lot of process, and I know it was Robert Camacho that said he was trying to find ways where some of the process that DOA, of course, DOA would need to do some of it to preserve the integrity of the process, I'm assuming, but some of those process could be powered down to the individual agencies, right? Certain things could be done at the agency level that would help DOA, but, you know, what that is, that we never got that far, you know, to sit down and says, you know, these are the 10 things that need to take place, and DOA is gonna do the top 5, and DOC can do the top 3, and, I mean, we even said, when we sign our personnel officer and TDY, our personnel officer to TYA, I mean, to DOA, you know, for a couple months, to help out with the paperwork, because they're so short on staff. I mean, we're trying to think of every which way to, because our officers are putting 16 hours, 18 hours, 7 days a week. Don't even get me started on their ability to do PT and PFQT requirements, because that's another issue, okay? And when they're putting 16 to 18 hours, I don't expect them to go out there and run a mile. But that's the other issues we have, but yeah, this has been a thorn in our side of how do we address all these, now that we put all these requirements here, now how do we carry it out?
Yeah.
So we kind of put ourselves in a position here where the intention was good, but these are issues that came up even 5-6 years ago about be careful what we ask for, because when we put all these standards, they look nice on paper and they look good, but
We weren't aware of the consequences of.
trying to carry it out is a different issue.
Yeah. I think a meeting with, DOA, the executive director, the heads of the agencies, and us as the commission, really needs to be had as soon as possible. There might be something that, is actually, we're able to come to an agreement, because I think right now we're all in silos. We're all assuming that something's gonna happen down there, and they're assuming something's gonna happen with us. I think we just need to unify the approach, everybody sit in the room, and then we talk about the elephant in the room. Don't just talk about it outside, because we don't know what color the elephant is. We're all sitting there and look at the same elephant. We can all, realize what that elephant is and to what extent we have to eat. So, that's another thing that we will be discussing with the executive director. And I think that we just need to move forward and hopefully come to some kind of agreement. I like the fact, Major, you were talking about like what the things were. Like many years ago, we hired officer ones. We didn't have the recruits or the trainees. We hired them many years ago, and maybe that'll fall in line with your law enforcement officer force structure thing. I don't know, that remains to be seen.
Chief Paris, one suggestion for the psychological check for all LE, at least for Guam Fire. For EMT certs, we initially get certified in the academy, and every 2 years we have to recertify. But under that certification doesn't say that we're able to practice our basic medical skills out in the field. We still work under a doctor's medical direction. So there are, every so often we have a change of medical director who is usually at GMH. Maybe it's consider hiring a psychologist to be on board so that psychologist, for whatever his term is, will provide that service for all LE all the way around, other than just the interim post-executive chair.
Again, that would come from behavioral health, if they have one here.
And then he'll be assigned
For all of the force agencies.
and that'll cut out costs, and he'll be a sitting member of the executive panel. So that's how we do it with our EMT certs. We get certified locally, we're certified nationally, but we work under the direction of a medical director at GMH.
So whenever it changes the medical director at the hospital, you guys have to,
They just follow suit with all our curriculum and all that.
So he just
doesn't change, he just carries on. It just allows us to legally practice our basic EMT skills out on the island. So just because anyone's EMT certified doesn't mean that they can practice. They still have to go through the local licensure office, public health, and follow under the medical
By the
director.
way, GCC, Guam Community College, has their own medical director for all medical training. So they actually have one on board here in Guam Community College. So maybe that's another idea, so if they can have a medical.
Assigned.
but it's a psychologist assigned.
A psychologist assigned for LE to take care of all those hurdles that you're faced with.
And it does say GCC provides all professional and administrative services.
That would be something good to bring up.
That'll cover that segment and save all the costs, and then streamlining the processes.
And
for
in the
DOE.
interim, if that's true and we're able to do it, then it can save us some money, or at least cost save us a little bit.
And I don't know if the medical director here is also a psychologist.
Yeah, well, we can look into that.
Yeah.
Okay, where were we at? Number four, medical program, medical profiles, post-certification. Under letter A, medical profiles, and it says further discussion on how to deal with extended medical profiles and moving forward. Plan of action to address these concerns moving forward. This is not anything new. We've been actually kind of talking about it in previous discussion points on the agenda. But I do recognize that we do need to have more in-depth discussions on it. I don't think that the post setting right now in this venue is appropriate. I think we're probably going to need to set up some kind of committee, like what we did with the law enforcement officer force structure. We had meetings every, 2 weeks until we were able to come up with some really well thought of document in addressing. So in addressing like medical profiles, I know that we brought it up in previous discussions also with Chief Antinonia. So I think rather than just sitting here and openly discussing it, we really need to formulate a committee.
And Mr. Chair, when you talk about anything medical, you need to involve medical subject matter experts, and that's not us. I'm talking about a doctor. I mean, we've been through it again. I'll bring up the Air Force again. Whenever we have anything medical, you go to medical.
Yeah.
And you consult with a medical professional. None of us, I mean, yes, we have EMTs, but we're not medical professionals. And that's understanding that as is how we can start. I mean, we can sit around and keep talking about it all day, and then the other one.
SMEs on.
Yes,
You
sir.
can invite, one of the positions that we, DOH contracts out, maybe just have us able to talk to that professional, maybe get an understanding of how they do their, examinations and what they go through, and maybe understand where we all come from.
Yeah, I think that Chief's got a point, and you have a point. I think in moving forward, it's, like normally we just want to get this thing and address it, but some of the considerations don't actually come to the forefront because we're too busy trying to address something where you're not looking at the whole picture.
We would like a quick technical fix, but it's not gonna work over time.
Technical fix comes with more consequences. Okay, so we will consider that in moving forward, ensuring that we have a medical expert on board as part of the committee. So perhaps next meeting, if we're able to agree, the executive director coming in, we will be reaching out also to some kind of a medical professional that has some dealings with this, and then we'll ask if it's possible that they can be assigned to the committee once we establish it. Okay. Letter B, low standard on comprehensive occupational medical program. This sounds like a continuation of the previous one. And I know that Chief Ray has something.
Yes,
Is that the same message?
this is the same. Yes, we have this instilled, our program at ARF works. But how this thing actually, how we got this to ARF was through DOD. Like Chief was saying, Department of Defense are always for the soldiers. They look after the soldiers. And we can't debit for the soldiers unless we give them the needs. And how we do that is, we need to lead that to the soldiers. And so, how we did that was, we hired an occupational certified doctor to look after our personnel. And so, he came up and said, okay, post-commission is not about getting rid of the peace officers. It's to help them solidify confidence in them, not to detract them from the unit. We're not here to punish our peace officers. We're here to help them get through their hard times. That's our job. Okay? And so that's why we have this program there. And so the doctor team will tell me as the fire chief, he's not fit to perform his responsibility as required. All because it could be high blood pressure, it could be just a lot of things that were baseline that this doctor sees that it's a dangerous move to put him in full capacity. Don't even at not full capacity, we still utilize them like Chief Manabusan mentioned. You can detract them from the main line and put them somewhere else, useful, which we do. We're not punishing our personnel. But with this certified occupational doctor on board, ladies and gentlemen, it helps the employer at ease, and it helps the employee at ease, where everybody actually are in the same page. We save his life by the doctor's recommendation. And that's how the extended medical profile, whatever we have to call it. It's the doctor's decision to say he's not fit yet to perform his actual duties. And I agree with Chief Manabusan. Some of the things actually that we put out for FPAC or ProPAC doesn't even materialize of the work they do on a section in the fire department. So, yes, again, I would like to revisit that again as to actually go back and retrack and look at what we can actually look into. So if it's suppression when they're assigned, if it's prevention when they're assigned, if it's just inspection sections, they don't have, they don't have to climb ladders. They don't have to do those putting the hoses and all that. Now it's up to the department to scissor that out and magnitude it to a microscope and say, okay, you're in prevention, this is what you do. So in the year, if he's assigned a prevention, so this is what the FPAC he's gonna perform. Now, if he's all on he's all on the truck and he's supposed to like art. If he's all on the truck and his job is to pull the hoses 300 feet and then pick up a litter 100 feet, so that's what we actually put for his training. That was his job is to answer radios. You're gonna have to put him out there and try to punish him while he's under the doctor's care. So that's what I'm saying. You can still work within the parameter of what's going on. And that's what we're using at ARC. Okay, I think I'm the only government body that actually has a certified occupational doctor looking over our guys. And it works. I would like to share that, it works. But it's up to the department to neutralize everything that impacts the firefighters, or the employees, or the peace officers. Look at it, you're gonna assign them a patrol, okay? So they're supposed to be running. So that's what I'm saying, you have to just break it down and accommodate the needs of the firefighters, or the police officers, or the customs officers. And that's what we did, we customized our requirement for our guys. You know, and if he's under the doctor's care, he's exempt from performing the FPAC. Until the doctor says he's cleared, okay? And the doctor will tell the employee, I think it's time for you either to choose retirement from medical or whatnot. The doctor is our voice in the employer's side. So it's a win-win for us, okay? Because any of our LEOs, and I'll say this, any of our firefighters can go to their PCP, their private clinical physician, and say, God, I don't feel good, you know? And give me 2 weeks of excuse notice, that sort of stuff. But believe me guys, on an occupational level, you go on there and say, doc, I need that excuse. He's gonna put you to this requirement where he goes, oh, no, you're good, you're going back to work. That's the difference between your private clinical physician and an occupational doctor. Believe me, it works. So our guys are actually, I'm not gonna say they're walking on eggshells. They're very careful about submitting leave applications and sick leave forms. Because once you give them like 2 weeks notice, all we do is, okay, we'll see our doctor. Okay, and they're being careful. So it's a win-win for the employee, the department head, the department itself, and the employer. It's putting everybody on check. Okay, and so that nobody bridges across, the parameters where you can get liable for loss.
Chief, by the way, airport has a bigger piggy bank than our piggy bank.
Alright, maybe it could be a simple thing as like maybe going to make an amendment in our rule or our regulation that just says that they will be referred to some kind of occupational doctor or whatever the technical term
We
is.
actually do have that rule in place with DOA. You can refer them to a third medical referral where they're gonna review your actual health, your medical condition.
Yeah, but the challenge is that for every referral that we make, it's about $500
Yeah.
per referral. It's like the onus is on the agency, and
Yes.
a lot of times all the money or the lack of the money that we do get, we have to make do with what we got. But
Yeah, Chief, how does the work, when the airport actually, I'll show you for you guys. On the initial, the airport pays for your visit. For this, we have an annual physical. When you don't pass your annual physical, because that's on you as an employee, that's on you, okay? You have to pay out of pocket your visits until you pass. So I guarantee you, that employee is gonna say, ooh, 500 every time we go for this appointment, he's gonna say, I'm gonna try to get back in shape because that's a lot of money I'm spending. And that's the policy we put in place, okay? And that's what we did. That's why we never, we always want to help them out, at the same time, we want to be honest about things.
It's a good program, Chief.
Yes, and so In real words, guys, through my year, I'm about to retire. Okay, we got a profile for these 2 days. That was back in 24.
I think the only difference between that and the existing program where we send referrals via DOA is perceptions of unfairness and selective enforcement. Is why is it only certain people are being referred to go get double checks where others can get away with not getting checked? And I think we can, and, you know, you don't have to answer, but just reflect on our own agencies, and these are perceptions that, and, you know, it's reality. But with the program you have in place, there's no favoritism, it's, you have to do it.
Yes.
But it's an expensive program.
It is, and like I said, it reverts away from lawsuits.
And it does protect the employee. And the employee, yes. Yeah.
And it works. I'm about to retire and I haven't seen any extended profiles.
Yeah, okay, well, you know, for me, it's like, you still, it goes back to what he said about you have a big piggy bank. I don't know about everybody else, but in my agency, we don't mandate our officers to go and get a physical every year, and on top of that, we wouldn't pay for it. It would be something you just do on your own. But I like the idea, it's just something that maybe we can link together with the issue with the physical agility testing, and then that committee that we're trying to come up with medical professionals, so that we have like 3 topics that we can talk about and try to tackle. All right, any other discussion? No?
I need to bring a topic up that we're all facing because of our shortages and because of the new 25-year plan that's been for retirement, that it goes into effect in 2024. Succession planning, replacement planning is critical. And you need to look at your agencies, look at yourselves, because we're seeing components of our department where we're gonna be really hurting in terms of succession. It is something we gotta consider as a commission. It's very important.
Okay, that sounds like something that we're all gonna face. And I think that in moving forward, we really have to, I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but I know that for my agency, our first and second cycle guys are already at the 30-year mark. They're ready to retire. That's already gonna be like 30-40% of our force. With that comes, the impact is institutional knowledge, or lack thereof, promotion opportunities for many people, lack of a right seat right. It'll be a whole new face of law enforcement. So, yeah, I agree.
Looking at the possible impacts on the continuity of operations.
Exactly.
Services to our community.
That's true. Do we go to letter C? Post-development of rules and processes for peace officer decertification, formalize a committee and establish a plan of actions to be developed moving forward. And again, it's a post-vice chair.
Yeah, you know, the word decertification, I think we gotta try and get actually to the teeth of this, to be certified, not our guys that are on profile. Let's not go there to try and be certified. I don't agree about the 5 strikes that we add on it was 12 months, and then we added an additional 3 months, right? So, to me, if he's under the doctor's care, I think it's unfair for us to try and certify this employee or write him one, okay? It's a health issue, okay? You can't write off someone if he has a health issue. That's not what the post-commission is doing, okay? And I've been looking at it. Virtually, the only thing I can think of about these certifications are if the employee actually separates from the department, okay? How many years? We say 10 years? It wasn't 10 years? I believe it's 10 years. If he wants to come back as a reemployment.
Yeah, 4
Ten
year.
years. 4 years. Okay.
Reemployment.
I do not know if that can actually change, just know it was brought to my attention by management or deputy that 4 years no longer exists. They can come back. As long as they do not have, I stand corrected if that's not the case from the deputies.
It is the case.
There are provisions that allow you to,
As long as you don't have any enforcement.
temporary employment of retirees.
In last year's budget.
Right.
This current budget,
Or something?
in this current budget and the next FY 20, which by the way, I emailed it to you, the budget. On the end. At the end of the miscellaneous, somewhere there, it says for public safety, notwithstanding the 4-year, you can actually bring them back if they've exceeded that.
Yeah.
So.
If they resign in good
Yes,
stead.
yeah, so then the question I came up with is, we had that issue with the post where you're grandfathered in, for those that were prior to 97 or something like that. So if you were here at that time and you left for the last 6 years, are you still, post-certified? Do your grandfathered in? Do you meet that requirement now?
I think it was,
Those are the other issues that we have to try to make sure we're.
I mean, if you look at it realistically or actually practically, it would be, if you've been out over 10 years, I would send you to some kind of refresher training.
Well, we sent everybody to refresher, but that post-certification that you got certified and you've been gone for the last 8 years, because you were grandfathered in originally, now you've been gone, I don't know.
I
how that
think it
works.
errs on the side when you have to get recertified totally.
So, but yeah, you can, but now there's no more 4
Yeah,
years,
so-
there's no more 4 years, so.
Okay,
We've gone 4 to 5
It's
years.
actually good news.
So what I'm alluding to is that the certification actually process, we gotta look at it as an impact, like if you have any criminal act procedure, okay, if you have anything that actually, during your badge, using your badge, you got fired on another employee. So having to bring you back as an employee, you're left with good standing, but then when you went and got employed somewhere else, you did something. And so that's what I'm saying, tracking. We gotta go specifically to where we're at with the decertification. But as far as medical conditions, I don't believe we should be certified. So that's why I want to go back to the commission and re-amend that. I believe post-commission is not about decertifying our employees or police officers when they actually have a health issue. It's actually this is a wellness, it's supposed to help. And so that I believe, we gotta go back and look at it, because we're trying to decertify this employee if he can't perform his responsibility after 25 years or 20 years, that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I asked for the body here, if we can go back and look at that and really look at it and see how can we actually scissor this out so that we can help our police officers. Because me, I believe, everyone after 60 years here, I think I'm the only one here in this room.
Over 60 years?
Over 60 years.
I think you're all alone.
No, he's not.
So that's what I'm saying, I can't say, I'm a better man of my men, that I can perform, all these requirements because of their issue. I value my people, I value my guys, and I try to take them and lift their spirit up, even if they're actually in that medical, issue that they're like this. So, I just asking.
I think that's kind of how we should be looking at our employees, but I think that, we still need to flesh this thing out.
Yep.
And, it's going back to getting a committee. So, I'm thinking when we meet next month, we're probably gonna have maybe 1 or 2 committees, in which we're gonna be looking for people to volunteer to attend. And keep in mind that the committee members are gonna be integral in helping us to develop some kind of policy and moving forward. And if we're able to get like the medical professionals and the SMEs on board, we could develop a better way of looking at, how to deal with with failures, decertification, and other policies as applies to the employees in their career.
I think it's a good point you made in the medical thing too, you know. We're in a dangerous profession, you know. Police officers get shot, one of my corrections officers gets stabbed. Last thing we want to say to them, right, when they're trying to recover is, sorry, but, you know, we're gonna decertify you post-commission, you know, because you can't make the PT tomorrow or the next day or whatever, stuff like that. Those are very tough issues, and that's why I'm saying even the representatives, again, from the Attorney General is a lawyer to be here too, an attorney to look at separating the medical, you know, situation of individuals. And then individuals too, some of our employees, they didn't predict that they would come back and say, hey, director, you know what, I've just been diagnosed with cancer or something like that. Yeah, right? You know, nothing can predict that, right? And that the kind of treatments they're gonna have to go through that will limit their ability to perform as, you have the standards, the training standards because of that, little bit, that disease or that illness that they're going right now.
Yeah, it's an organization that they have they have a medical review board that goes through these medical issues and they act as a separate board versus putting that decision on one person to say, oh, we're gonna fire you. Going through a review board is more appropriate.
But I think decertification and terminating somebody are two different things. I think that if you decertify somebody, there's a process for recertifying. But along with decertifying somebody should come, like removal of certain benefits that you've been getting because you were law enforcement, right? And so like some people who are not doing the job and they're not patrolling or they're not walking a beat or they're not working on in high stress or environments that exposes you to high risk, and then you're sitting at a desk but you're getting the same benefit, like the hazardous duty pay, and you're not in the area. There should be some. I mean, you know, there are certain things that we need to consider. Because the guys who are actually out there doing it are looking at the guy on the desk saying, well, that guy's not doing anything, just sitting there, you know, doing paperwork.
And we actually addressed it in the fire department. If you're assigned, we're all EMTs, but if you're assigned on the ambulance or advanced support, you get to 15%. If you're not, you don't get that 50%.
Yeah.
So we do have elements of that, like with GFB.
So we gotta look at that and try and create some standard policy that applies across the board.
Or the other again, like I said, if you have this certified doctor on board and this employee still resists, right? You can now go to the next level and say, hey, you ain't getting your increase, okay? You gotta get back on track. You're the doctor, I'm following doctor's order. You followed doctor's order 3 months ago. Now, why are you questioning this doctor when he said you're fit to perform? So that's where I'm at with these guys. Our employees actually, the doctor made it clear, these are what you're supposed to perform, these are what you're supposed to succeed with, and we're gonna work on it for you to get back on track. But then if the doctor actually now says he cannot no longer perform, thank you. Now he can talk to the employee and says, you can't perform, okay? You got injured during the job, you have a prosthetic, I'm not against that, but you can't be carrying ladders. You really want to, I can't. But I can put you in another section, talking, but you won't be doing the 24 hours. And that's that. So, it's very sensitive, you know, like I said, you have a voice, professional voice to stand for both sides and be neutral. That's that occupational doctor. Trust me. I never had to go to civil service, correct?
How much a year?
Because that doctor actually was my voice, you know.
How much does it cost per car?
It costs actually the 4 guys to go for an annual, per head, for an annual physical with the occupational doctor. We actually, I'll share with you this. IHPs are doctor clinic for our, and per head, actually, you pay actually out of pocket about $1,200 for the annual physical, per day, for everything.
How much total, like for that department?
So we're looking at maybe about 1,200 to 52 bodies up there. That's how much we have to pay. But that's the initial, okay? Now, if he doesn't pass it, then he has to cut that out of his pocket to make sure he passes.
And that's annually? Annual? Like under $62,000 a year?
And that's And so the airport will pay for your visit, your first visit. That's actually a good thing. That's the incentive. But it's up to you now to make sure you pass it.
Does the airport do the same thing with the police officers too?
For the officers?
No, sir.
No. So like I said, this is the implementation of the program we got. It's effective, and that's what we're looking at, and we want to share it.
You know, a lot of the stuff we've been talking about, in previous meetings, but we really need to expect to get to do something, which is why we really need to have a committee. So, expecting next month, we will be, asking for a solicitation for, volunteer to be assigned to, one of maybe 2 or 3 committees. Because even in previous minutes, I'm even reading stuff that is being repeated again today.
Yes.
So, with that being said, if there's no further discussion,
We have one question.
Sure.
So come January 2024, are all agencies testing on the physical tests that's
it
designed?
depends on what you're testing, like with,
With customs and all our issues right now with medical clearance and all that.
you are still mandated to
To
test.
test.
Yes, so I use me as an example, my agency, we test every December or November, and then like people will come on and say, I have a waiver or I'm exempt, so they don't test, but we don't have the policy, not the policy, we don't want to move forward with any type of adverse procedures.
We just test.
But if they don't test and they have a waiver, right? Question for me is, how long should that waiver be? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it a 30-year waiver? What's the deal? Which is why when we talk with medical professionals and dealing with these issues and certification, we need to understand. I mean, my initial stance before was, if you don't take it, you need to take it. But then now I'm starting to see later on in my career, right, that, like people who have cancer, right, or they've been sick, long-term illness, and you expect them to participate, right, in these testings. But we also have people who had like open heart, who after almost a year, they came back and they're testing. So it's like they're examples to those who flat out say, I'm not gonna take it because I have a waiver. But the thing is like, as law enforcement officers, we're supposed to be following rules, but we're not. In some cases, we feel like we're the exception. So I don't want to go out and terminate anybody, I really don't. Because Lord knows we need the number of people, we need more than what we have currently. I just kind of feel like we need to find another way of looking at it. That's why I brought the point up, like maybe there's a way to incentivize it, to help people understand it. If I'm able to do my job, I get, rewarded for, passing the physical fitness test, I qualify for promotion. I don't know, these are the things.
Or if you pass this year, you don't have to do it next year. Just don't gain weight.
You can gain weight and pass, you just pass. Anyway,
Mr. Chairman?
yes,
Maybe, something just to put out there is maybe start trying to organize and get a budget ready for FY '25. I mean, if we want to look at, picking up more people, maybe some of the programs and medical services that we're going to consider, we may want to consider putting a budget together to present this and have GCC submit it on our behalf and all that.
we are, the only thing though is that I know that the top, when we're talking about the future of Post, is that Post is trying to separate itself from Guam Community College, to be a little bit more, I guess, self-sustaining and independent, like a truly independent body that certifies. You know, you don't want to give people the impression that you're catering to anybody.
But we can also, prepare a budget that puts us on our own. And
We've done that. We've submitted a budget on office space, salaries, supplies, equipment, and stuff like that. But that will also be taken into consideration. Thanks.
We can even request for, the healthcare provider, through the legislature and say, hey, let's legislate this. Person should pay for annual physical to all of these officers, all the departments. Can we include this for the healthcare provider to provide?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that's a good idea. Put it out there about our budget, plan for it. Because Lord knows we do money. But anyway, I don't want to belabor, we've been here for, an hour now. The last thing we have really is, two things, which is, go through the minutes real quick, and then I need a motion to approve it, and then vote on it, and then announcements. I want to get you guys out. So if you're looking at the minutes while Ray has something.
Yes.
It's on February 9th.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead, we're reading it. Can we go ahead and update our mass email? Because I know there's a lot of them out there. Okay, they either retired or they transferred to another department. To update it, that was a discussion with the chiefs and also Ms. Berger. Because a lot of the emails that are coming back, these guys
I
are.
just updated mine with her.
Okay. And, we're having a lot of, rejected emails coming back like,
I think what we can do is, like, if we get rejected emails, we take them out. We take the ones currently that just responded, take them out.
well, a lot of them too actually transferred to another department. Not to mention airport police. Airport police.
Is this? I'm sorry, I'm reading the, it's only reading the minutes.
You're hired.
Announcements.
Chief Ray, just a question.
Yes, sir.
With your annual medical insurance, is it the same as all of Guam, or you guys have a separate type of coverage?
No, it's
The same thing?
That's what I'm asking. We can introduce this to have it umbrella the entire.
Because one of the approaches that we were doing years back was, we were trying to use our Guam medical insurance when you get that 1-3 annual.
Yes.
We tried to do that now. There were some guys and gals that were under like TRICARE, like in the military. So that was the only obstacle that we saw in terms of using your Guam insurance. And American Medical Clinic was willing to do it. It didn't really, that whole initiative didn't really last so long. It like faded away. But I do remember that. And one of the things that, I'll bring up the Air Force because everything goes back and forth. I mean, they had a certain form that they would give you and you could take it down to your dental clinic and the doctor there would fill it out and say your dental is good or you're fit in terms of dental. When it came to the medical side, you would do that on the military base. Now, if we take that and put it in reverse here with us, like for those that are in the military, if they're in the military and they're considered medically fit, now there is going to be an issue that for like firefighters because we don't use the regular medical checkups. We use an FPAT, okay, firefighter physical agility test. So that's the only areas that will be different, but, you know, there's so many different ways, approaches, but we've been going through this for many
I
years.
know, and that's why I do recommend that once the director gets on board, chief, you can sit down and say, hey, let's have a universal budget in help of these officers.
But one thing is for certain, we need a medical subject matter expert in that subject.
In fact, I can even ask him to come and sit in the meetings.
Somebody who's familiar with this, not I'll just stop at that point, they need to be a subject matter expert in this type of medical.
Oh, chief, trust me, the occupational malpractice we saw us already going for 30 years. So.
Okay, Chairman?
Yes.
I move that we accept the minutes of February 9th, subject to any changes or corrections by the fellow members.
All right, Marvel, second motion.
Okay, all in favor? All right, any open discussion or announcements for anything?
Okay, give this to the Department of Administration. I know we provided a copy for GCC and University of
What that
Guam.
is?
This is our recruitment for Corrections Reserve Officer Program, right? And, Major Sanchez here is the contact person. She has her contact information there. So any marshal who wants to come over and become a reserve officer, lead investigator, you know,
What's the monthly pay?
no, it's 500 for, again, a stipend, you know, that we have, right? But, this is our initiative to get that up, but I'm just asking, you know, Francis, if you can let the director know, right? Let's take it care of, that's what your name posted, because a lot of members of the public.
Is that something that needs to go through like DOA and put out a notice for reserve officers, or is it taken care of by?
Actually, what happens is, they're instructed that if, when they call, Major Sanchez, that they bring, Department of Administration, application for employment up to, the director's office. Put it up there, they get whatever, we'll guide them on there.
Okay.
How we get
Yeah, $500 for how many hours?
42 hours out of the month. Just to stay in the program, I believe it's just 20, maybe something like that.
It's same as GPDs, it's not much different than what GPD.
You don't want to like raise the bar and.
We wanted to put an 800, but, you know, I know 500 is still kinda,
Major, how long is the reserve academy for?
some won't do it for, some won't even do it for 800, but you know.
120 hours.
For the training.
I sent you a blog.
Okay, anyone else? Thank you, PUC.
Great news.
Any last? No? Okay, with that being said, our next scheduled meeting, it will be tentatively scheduled for Friday, October 20, 2023 at 10:30, subject to change. If not, then do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.